What's going on, guys? Welcome to my channel. Today we're going to be checking out the Eachine Wizard TS215. It really seems like ages since Eachine last came out with the mini drone. They've released various crafts from fixed wings to micro drones, as well as a variety of accessories. But I think it's nice to see them now focusing on a new mini drone. So without further ado, let's check out the TS215. Looks like we're off to a good start with a nice high quality box. And let's see what's all included inside. Not a true unbox since I've already opened it. First up, we get two full sets of 5046 DAL Cyclone Props. These are probably my favorite props of all time. They have a ton of power, fairly efficient, and are freakishly durable. Really, what more can you ask for? Two Velcro battery straps, an AK, and two prop wrenches. Some spare hex head screws. Try saying that fast 10 times. Some foam pads meant to be used as the landing skids, which is not really practical being that the battery is bottom mounted. But what is actually practical is the battery plate. It comes with a rubber mat and some foam pads. For me, it is a necessary add-on as I tend to have a lot of hard landings. Right hand circularly polarized antenna with an RPSMA connector. And of course, the TS215. I'm not the biggest fan of the camo paint scheme, but the frame itself is actually very nice. Definitely took inspiration from a popular style, which I'm sure many have already mentioned. So, let's take a closer look at the TS215. Actually, let's take a couple measurements first. The quad by itself is 295 grams, with the battery plate 308. With the antenna, 314. I have no idea why I'm doing it like this. So let's go ahead and speed this up a bit and see what the all-up weight is, minus the battery of course. 347 grams. Now let's take a couple measurements with the caliper. The top plate is 3 millimeters. Arms are 4 millimeters. The gap between the bottom plate and the flight controller is 4 millimeters. And last of all, the bottom plate is also 3 millimeters thick. The TS215 is a modular stretched X frame. This just means that the arms are separate and the front and rear motors are further away from each other. The arms are a bit longer if compared to a true X frame, which I guess does add a bit of weight. But all in all, I think it's worth it, as all of the stretched X frames that I've flown have flown amazingly, and they definitely feel more stable, especially at higher speeds. Flip the quad over and we see that each of these arms are held in place by two screws. I think the front ones are good, but the rears have one set of screws held in place by the standoffs holding the flight controller. I don't think it should be a problem, but I just wanted to note that because of this, you won't really be able to tighten that set of screws down fully. You can see that the arms do shift around a bit here. But yeah, I don't think it should be an issue. The only way I see these arms shifting around like this is from moving it by hand or in a crash. At first glance, you might think that the top plate is a little barren, but in actuality, it does a great job protecting your components. The battery straps go through the two holes here. I suggest using both, as the battery can move around when just using one. Maybe if the rubber mat was more grippy, you might have been able to get away with just one, but to be safe, I think two is necessary. I've already fixed this part, but I suggest all who have not done so install a standoff. It's a 4mm standoff in between the bottom plate and the flight controller. When I received the quad, the flight controller was actually caving downwards because all that was there was a screw. Alright, let's move on. Let's go over some of the components, and we'll start first with the motors. These are 2306 motors, and they are 2450 kV, and they should support 2 to 6 cell lipos. It's got a 5mm hollow shaft and uses a 2mm hex head screw to secure the bell down. It's a very good looking motor, and I'm really loving the 3-spoke design on the bell. I'm sure the openness helps in cooling as well. The motors come in clockwise and counterclockwise, and all this weighs around 32 grams, which is about the average weight for a motor of this size. The specs state that this motor should produce 2300 grams of thrust at 16 volts, which is a 4-cell LiPo using a 60/40 2-blade prop. It's a bit high. I think this type of thrust is more congruent with a 5 or 6-cell LiPo. Regardless, these are still great motors. The bearings are ultra smooth, they feel ultra smooth, and they definitely sound great. When it comes to build quality, these motors are just as good as any of the high-end name brands out there. They are very well constructed. I mean, they look and feel like an expensive motor. Really, top-notch quality. And next up, we have some 40 amp BL Heli 32 ESCs. You heard that right. 40 amps of continuous current with burst rates of up to 45 amps. Just a year ago, I remember flying quadcopters with just 20 amp ESCs. We've come a long way since then. You know what I think would be a good video? I think I should bring out one of my old quads and see how they stack up against these newer ones. Yeah, I'll probably do that in my next video. Just do a quick comparison between the two. Anyways, these ESCs can run up to 2 to 6 cell LiPos and support up to D-Shot 1200 protocol. A couple things that make these ESCs special: there is a current sensor built right into the board, as well as an adjustable LED. Very cool stuff. Next up, we have the flight controller, which is obviously not your typical 36mm square board, but instead we get a proprietary board that was created just for the TS215. It's an Omnibus F4 flight controller running Betaflight 3.2. A little out of date, but flashing to a new firmware should be a breeze. I'll be keeping it at 3.2 for this review. To reduce vibration, the MPU 6000 IMU is soft mounted on some type of silicone pad. I think it's silicone, I'm not sure. So I mean, just as you would anything that is like a little strange or weird, you'd poke at it with a stick, right? Well, in this case, I poked at it with some tweezers. But yeah, it's just some silicone tape, I think. Moving along, we also have a built-in buzzer. You'll hear it sound off whenever the voltage drops below a certain point, or you can bind it to a switch and use it if you crash and can't find the darn thing. On the bottom left of the screen, right next to the buzzer, is the boot button. It's easy to access for convenience for whenever you need to flash the firmware. And on this side, we have the micro USB port as well as the micro SD card slot. This is actually a really good flight controller. There's a lot of features. We're talking about built-in Betaflight OSD, barometer, current sensor, a 5V BEC, plus the ones I mentioned earlier, plus 6 UART ports. I'm not sure why you would need 6 UART ports, but hey, it has it. The quad comes with a built-in DVR, and I do like the idea, but the DVR on this quad is just terrible. It introduces a ton of lag when flying FPV, to the point where flying is no longer enjoyable. I think I flew half a pack before I called it quits. Unless a fix comes out or Eachine replaces the DVR with something that doesn't lag, I suggest removing it altogether. The good thing is, the fix is rather simple. There's no soldering involved. All you gotta do is swap the connector to a 3-pin and replace the wires so that the camera connects directly to this port. When putting the wires into the 3-pin connector, make sure they're installed in the correct order. It should be ground, 5V, and signal starting from the left. And next up, the VTX. It's a great VTX. It's got a wide range of power schemes from 25, 200, 500, and 800 milliwatts, 30.5mm mounting holes, a very durable MMCX connector that's connected to an RPSMA connector, which is then connected to a CP antenna. The power scheme, bands, and channels can be adjusted using the button on the side, but because it also has smart audio, you can adjust the settings using a compatible radio. And the last component is a 1200 TV line CCD camera, and it comes with a 2.8mm lens. It looks kind of like an old Foxeer HS1177, and it produces a great looking picture. However, the camera only supports PAL video mode, so you NTSC lovers out there are kind of out of luck. The camera sits on a 3D printed TPU mount, which is soft and flexible. I think it's a good idea to use this as a mount. The TS215 doesn't really need it, but I think if you ever have an issue with jello, you can use something of this sort to reduce the vibration. And I think that should do it for the components. For this next part, I'll just be going over my Betaflight settings. I don't remember what it was initially set to, so I'll just quickly show what my current setup is. And this is the flight test portion of my review. We're going to start off with some line of sight and we'll do some FPV after. I did notice slight oscillations, but that can be easily tuned out. And what surprised me is even with the oscillations, the motors were never more than just warm. TS215 is like a breath of fresh air with top-notch high-quality parts, well, mostly high-quality parts. It wasn't a surprise to think that it was going to be a great mini drone. Everything from the frame durability to the power to FPV picture all surpassed my expectations. With a slight modification, it flew great, sounded great, and it was a blast to fly. The TS215 is a winner in my book. I think this would make a great quad for just about anyone. That goes for both new and experienced flyers alike. It's got the power for experts, it's got the durability for crashers, and it's got excellent handling for all. And with that being said, that's going to do it for this review. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see y'all in the next one. See ya!